Terri O'Sullivan is the Apostate Services Development Officer with Faithless, a service of Humanist UK which supports people who have left high control religious groups and raises awareness for issues around apostasy. Terri, thank you very much for joining Humanism Now.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Pleasure, and looking forward to hearing all about the great work of Faithless. Before that, I think it'd be fascinating to hear about your personal background and your journey both to humanism and to your role at Faithless.
Sure, yeah, okay. So I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, so not as a humanist. For those that don't know about the Jehovah's Witnesses, it's quite a controlling religious group. You have 3 meetings a week, lots of preparation for each meeting, personal Bible study each week, family Bible study each week. Then you have the ministry, which is knocking doors several times a week. And there's just a lot. And then there's all the literature that you need to read. Yeah, so there's a lot to do. It's a very, very busy life. But in addition to it being very busy and all-consuming, taking over all areas of your life, it's very controlling as well. So, as a young child, I was hit for asking questions about like the dinosaurs and how that connected with creationism and stories like that. And also the morality of the Bible was always an issue for me. Like how could God be described as loving if he's going to kill all the Egyptian babies? So things like that really used to bother me when I was a young child. But because it's so controlling, because you're going to be punished, I had a lot of nightmares about Armageddon, the end of the world coming, which the Jehovah's Witnesses say is next week. They've been saying it's next week since 1879. So yeah, it can be really stressful because they show a lot of images of, like, even in the Bible, what's called the My Book of Bible Stories book. It's a yellow book that they give to children, and they'll give this to newborn babies. So, like, there's not an age limit on this book. And in that book, it's all stories written in a way that's supposed to appeal to children, and each page has got a picture of the Bible story. But on nearly every page, there's a story of somebody being killed, and some of the images are quite gory as well. So that, for example, the story of the flood. So most Christian groups will show an image of the ark and all these lovely animals 2 by 2, and that's kind of cute. For the Jehovah's Witnesses, what they show is lots of people drowning and dying. So the main image is that was quite frightening, of a woman holding her baby, trying to hold the baby above the water, but clearly they're both drowning. And then there's another woman of a giant strangling a woman to death, and there's a baby about to be chopped in half. These are the kind of images in the children's book. And then so the adult literature is equally as harrowing. There we go. I couldn't even say that word. So I always say to people, when people sort of ask for a quick snippet, what's it like being a Jehovah's Witness? I always say it's 2 words to describe it, is fear and isolation. So I've described the fear. The isolation is the Jehovah's Witnesses are very active in excommunicating anybody who does or says something that they don't agree with. And when somebody is excommunicated or disfellowshipped, no one in that congregation, including their own family members, are allowed to talk to them anymore. So if you bump into somebody in the street, they can't even say hello even. So that's pretty harsh. The same goes for people who just decide to leave. They didn't even do anything that the Jehovah's Witnesses feel is wrong. They will be isolated. They will be shunned, is the word. But even within the religion itself, so there are always people talking about other members of the congregation who aren't seen as spiritual enough. The word spiritual really means a rule follower in the Jehovah's Witnesses. So it doesn't mean what people tend to think the word spiritual means. It just means somebody who follows all the rules exactly. So yeah, fear and isolation. So it's great. So obviously at age 21, I was like, I'm not sure anymore. There's a lot more detail to that story of how and why I left. But suffice to say, I left and that didn't end well. So my mom kicked me out of home with just a couple of bin liners with some clothes in. And I was homeless for a while. And obviously that's pretty hard. And I wasn't a regular 21-year-old either. I'd had a very, controlled life that was very different to the rest of the world. So I think emotionally and mentally, I was much younger than 21,
Right.
if I'm honest. But so that lasted a while. Eventually, obviously, I got on my feet and settled in my life. And in 2007, I actually set up a support group for former Jehovah's Witnesses, and that was for social events and just chatting about experiences, really. And that quickly grew to over 1,000 members. And people contacted me from all over the world, in fact. There's actually a very good and supportive community for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses internationally. If anybody wants to know about that, I can tell them about that. After that, I came into contact with Faith to Faithless. It was very much at the beginning of Faith to Faithless that I contacted them and said, hey, I really like what you're doing. And then I joined the leadership team, which so Faith to Faithless back in the early days was run primarily by volunteers. And so I became part of that leadership team with another friend of mine, Steve, who's also an ex-Jehovah's Witness. And obviously we had 2 ex-Muslims, a few ex-evangelical Christians and other groups as well represented. And then in more recent times, we've been able to get more funding and we're now staff-led, but also we run under the advice of an advisory board. That was a mouthful. The advisory board is a group of apostates, shall I say, people who've left high control religious groups, and they just tell us whether we're doing a good thing or not, and give us their opinion. So it's important to us at Faith to Faithless that we are led by our service users and volunteers who have lived experience, so that we are offering a service and running in the direction that is relevant for people today who in the UK who have left controlling religious groups, because it is certainly not an easy experience.
I can imagine, and thank you very much for sharing your lived experience as well. So can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do at Faith to Faithless, and perhaps why we need a charity and a support group for people really leaving faith in the UK?
Yeah, so I have the rather grand job title of Apostate Services Development Officer. So what I do is I run all the services, which is like peer support sessions, both online and in person, online social events, in-person social events. We do online speaker events as well. And these are really useful for people who have left groups where they've been totally isolated from their communities. So obviously, when it's a very controlling religious group, usually everyone you know in your social network, your friends, your family, are all part of that religion. So when you leave, and if they all stop talking to you, you can be in a position where you actually have no one because you didn't have any friends like I did. I didn't have any friends outside of the religion. So having peer support sessions, which we do weekly, can make a massive difference. It just enables people to talk about their experiences in a safe space where it's other people who get it, who've been in those situations, and to feel that kind of a sense of community, like, yeah, there is a space for me. So yeah, that's really nice, and a lot of people end up making friends through that community. And for some people, it takes a while to get settled in because they've been through what is actually quite a traumatic event, and religious trauma is a very real thing. So if any of your listeners want to learn more about religious trauma, I do strongly recommend Googling it. You'll see the work by Marlene Winnell, who coined the phrase first. And I believe you've got another event coming up where you'll most likely be talking about religious trauma there as well.
We were discussing the work that Faith to Faithless does and why it's needed in the UK, because I think some people may wonder why we need a charity for people leaving faith.
Yeah,
but
okay.
I think you've covered much of that, unless there's more you'd like to say.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd like to say on that is that I feel like the reason that we need this, like for people that aren't really sure why we would need a specific charity for this issue, because obviously there are charitable groups for all types of trauma, and then there's Samaritans that you can call about any issue. The reason that it makes a difference is because you've been in such a close community, and that it's really hard to explain that to someone who hasn't been through it. So, say if you've left the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Exclusive Brethren, or you've left Islam. Now, lots of people can kind of recognize the difficulties that might leave you with, but they don't really understand how detailed all the issues are and how deep it runs. So if your family don't talk to you anymore, it's not like a regular family falling out, like over a political issue. Perhaps your family fell out over Brexit, like a lot of families did, or they're falling out. Families fall out all the time, but families usually come together for what we call hatch, match, dispatch. They'll come together for a christening or some sort of naming ceremony, or a wedding or a funeral and things like that. And there'll be other events where they'll come together and they'll just sort of like hide the differences at those times. Well, if you've been raised in a controlling religious group, you not only will you not be told of a parent's death or a grandparent's death or some other relative, you may not be invited at all to any kind of funeral or wedding services, because some of these religious groups teach that the dead person will not go to heaven if there's an apostate there, or the married couple will not have a lasting or happy marriage if there's an apostate there. So these are the kind of issues, like it's a lot deeper than just having a disagreement with your family members. Like for the family members that are no longer talking to you, it really is a life or death matter. And that might be if you're ex-evangelical Christian or ex-Jehovah's Witness or one of the other Christian controlling groups. That might be that they're waiting for the day that God brings his vengeance, right? Or you may come from a very controlling Islamic background where your family are very, very religious, and actually maybe they wish harm on you. Or there's other people you might come from a liberal Muslim background. Your parents might be okay, they don't feel great about it, but okay with you leaving Islam and being non-religious. But there are other people out there who are not okay with it, and they don't even know who you are. So to have a safe space where you can talk about those things, it makes a massive difference. So yeah, those.
Absolutely.
I could probably go on about that for hours.
I'm sure. So I wonder as well, it might be interesting just to pull out, what should be considered a high control religion? What do these communities have in common, and how common is this form of religion in the UK?
Okay, yeah. So I'll give two answers there. The first answer is I don't define it for our service users. So our people that want to use Faith to Faithless services, we are people-led. So somebody contacts us and says, I was in a very controlling religion, X happened, Y happened, this is what's happened to me, and it's caused me a lot of distress, then we will welcome them into using our services. So we don't say, can you tick these boxes to see whether you're allowed to access any of our services. We don't do that. However, if people are sitting there, because like religious trauma is like other forms of trauma, like especially family-based trauma. A lot of people who were raised in dysfunctional families or any kind of family background where there's been abuse, it can take people into their adulthood until they recognize that that was abuse. And it is the same with religious trauma. So people just think, yeah, my parents were a bit religious, and yeah, they kicked me out of home, and yeah, this awful thing happened and that awful thing happened. And but it takes like several years of therapy or really like reading other people's story to try and get like a grasp on your own story, to recognize that, wait, that wasn't okay, that was actually abusive. And I think what I've experienced is actually a form of trauma. So what's useful then is, as you've asked, is to know what would then describe the kind of things that we see for people that have left controlling religious groups. So that would be, you're not allowed to question the religion at all. Like, so maybe you can ask small little questions, but if you're asking it in a question like, I'm not really sure if I believe this, then that's not okay. I mean, that goes against one of your basic human rights, the freedom of religion or belief, right? So if your group also separates you from the outside world, if you're not allowed friends outside of your religion, or it's really restricted on how you can connect with them, that's very controlling. If you're told how to dress and dressing a different way is seen as really bad and you could get punished for it or shamed for it, that's controlling. If there's certain foods you can't eat and you are really strongly punished for not abiding by those laws, then that is controlling. If you have to deal with so many rituals down to how you sit down on the toilet and how you tie your shoes, that is controlling. Now, looking at control, there's also, for some people, they actually want that level of control. We have to accept that there is freedom to worship and freedom to practice your faith in the way that you want to. And that is totally okay, of course. But however, if the punishment for saying, I don't want that level of control, I want to make these decisions for myself, I don't want to live by those rules anymore. If you saying that cuts you off from your family or your community, or has you be shamed or punished in some other way, then that is too much control, and that's not okay. And that's who we support, people that have been through those experiences.
No, thank you very much for sharing. My next question was, what are the signs that someone needs support? But I'm sensing from what you've said so far that a lot of people who potentially need your services are perhaps not around those who would be able to spot it. So is it more a case of self-referral that you get with Faith to Faithless?
Like, it's very rare that we have anything other than self-referral. So generally, and I still feel like there's more work we could be doing on that. I mean, we do have an apostasy awareness course that we're trying to educate service providers so that they can refer to us, and that is having some fruitful results in that people are starting to do that. But I mean, this is a big, there's a lot of people in this country and a lot of services in this country, so it's a big job. But yeah, no, the vast majority of our service users just Googled or saw a YouTube video, because Faith to Faithless has a YouTube channel. We were on social media, they saw posts there, or somebody else told them about it. I mean, I will say a lot of people get their support through social media these days. So Facebook or Reddit and other social media groups, etc. So they'll be looking for, are there any other people like me? Because a lot of people leave these groups and they think they're the only one. In fact, it's almost everyone. That's a really common thing that people say to me. I thought it was just me. And you're like, no, it's not just you. This affects a lot of people. And so then start looking for other people that have been through similar, and then they discover, well, there's hundreds, there's thousands of people in this group. And then they discover groups like ours that offer support.
And how supported do those that you help, how supported do they feel? I'm sure you can't share too much personal stories, but generally, what is the feedback like?
Well, the feedback's always very positive. People do say to us, I mean, in one of our last sessions, we have a topic for discussion and peer support. And one of the topics we had recently was on ritual, like religious rituals. How was that for you when you were in your religious community? How has that affected you today? And does that impact your day-to-day life in that you still feel the need to sort of like pray when you eat your food because you're so used to doing that all your life, or whatever? There's loads of different rituals that people might have engaged in.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things that came out of that session was that at the end of people talking about these really controlling rituals, people said there's some benefit in ritual, and actually that they found that one of their new rituals coming to peer support sessions has actually really made a difference because it's giving them that sense of community. So that for me was quite high praise and really highlights how this makes it, because it might seem like it's not that big a deal, like having a Zoom session once a week. It might not seem like that big a deal, but actually that makes a massive deal to someone who just needs to really talk about what they've been through and meet other people who've been through the same.
That space for community ritual support.
Yeah.
That's great. And how about the humanist movement in general? How do you feel we're doing in providing a soft landing for those leaving high control faiths?
I think groups such as your own, such as Central London Humanists, are doing a great job, actually. You're putting on events that might be relevant to apostates, and you're like running social events and things like that, and creating that sense of community. I know you have like a WhatsApp community, which is really lovely for people to sort of connect with others if they feel safe to do so. So I really think there's a lot of groups, humanist groups out there doing some really great things. There are lots of other humanist groups who would like to be doing more, but don't really quite know what else they could do, or just like it hasn't appeared on their radar as yet. So I think there's still quite a lot of work to do, and that's part of my work, actually, to just raise that awareness and teach people. So if there's any humanist groups watching this and you want to know more about these kind of issues, I can do a talk, or find somebody else to do a talk at one of your meetings to sort of like talk about these issues and how you might help apostates more in your own communities.
That's great. And let's wrap up to quickly make sure everybody knows how to get in contact with you. If somebody looking for support, or would like to reach out to you to arrange a talk or find out more about the work of Faith to Faithless, how can they find you?
Yeah, they can just contact us via email is the best way. So that's info@faithtofaithless.com. And that's all as one word, Faith to Faithless, the word 2, not the number. info@faithtofaithless.com.
And you mentioned the upcoming event that we'll be jointly hosting. Would you like to provide a little bit more details on that?
Yeah, so I'll be chairing the event. We have 2 speakers there, Dr. Savin Bapir-Tardi, who is a psychotherapist and a senior lecturer in psychology. And she specializes in supporting apostates, and she also specializes in support for traumatic experiences based on honor-based violence, FGM, and forced marriage as well. And then we have Wendy Grendale, who is a senior lecturer at Regent College London. She's a former Jehovah's Witness, and she has published several articles on shunning and isolation that former Jehovah's Witnesses face. And she will talk about the social dynamics and coercive power construct, which is a model that she's helped to develop. So we'll hear from them, and then I'm sure I'll be fielding some questions on to get more from their expertise and open it up to the audience as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and we'll be discussing the social challenges and how people can exercise self-care when dealing with apostasy issues. I think these are really important issues, and yeah, fantastic panel. So really looking forward to that event. That's great. And Terri O'Sullivan, thank you so much for your time. Just before we go, I do like to ask all of our guests if there's something which they've changed their mind on, either through their work or just generally recently. So Terri, what have you changed your mind on lately?
Yes, the word apostate.
Okay.
Try not to use it. So we've been using the word throughout the whole of this meeting, and I'm sure the event will probably be advertised with the word somewhere as well. The word apostate, to me, and if you look it up in the dictionary, it just means someone who's left a religious group or no longer believes. There's no aspect of controlling in the definition, actually. So to me, that's quite an ordinary word, and it's useful, and for the people that we're talking about, it's a does what it says on the tin word. However, these religious groups that we're talking about use it as a word of oppression, and they use it to shame, to punish, to really demonize people to such a degree that for me personally, it took me 6 years before I could use the word. And I had already decided I was an atheist and a non-believer, and I didn't believe in anything that the Jehovah's Witnesses preached, but the word apostate was still held some power, because when you're deconstructing your beliefs, the way the brain works, I have a psychology degree, but so I'm not going to explain it in any great detail because I'm not very good at explaining it. But the way your brain works is that the older part of your brain is where the emotions are, right? So that's a more fundamental part to what's going on in the way you process information, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the cognition, the logic, reason. So when you sort of deconstruct your faith, you lose all the beliefs and the doctrines, and you give up on all of that, and you create some new sense of meaning and purpose for yourself. But what's left can still be the emotions tied to those doctrines. So if you were taught that apostates are evil, it's the worst sin, worse than murder and rape, which is what I was taught. It's the only unforgivable sin. The emotions of behind that definition can stay with you. And so it's really painful to be labeled an apostate for a lot of people who've left very controlling religious groups. So more liberal religious people won't use the word apostate, and a lot of our service users won't use that word to identify. And some people do take it on as a badge of honor, which I have done. Sure. I've been through a lot to go through it. But yeah, there's a lot of work to be done on that word. We've used it for a long time, but I've changed my mind on us using it. And we're going to rethink that.
Is there a better term?
There isn't. So this is a work in progress. So if any of your listeners have got a better term, let us know. I think we're just saying ex-religious people at the moment, which kind of fits.
Very inclusive. Yes. Now, thank you for issuing the challenge. If anybody has a replacement term for the word apostate, do write in, and we will include all the information for how to get in contact with Terri and the fantastic team at Faith to Faithless. Terri O'Sullivan, thank you for all the great work that you do, and thank you for being on Humanism Now.
Thank you.